Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. Today I'm going to go through a country comparison because oftentimes people are calling me to figure out, hey, listen, where they should relocate. And so I'm going to go through a couple different ones to give you kind of my impressions of what you might like and dislike. And this is specifically today I'm going to cover Bulgaria versus Cyprus, okay? And so we're going to go through how these might play out for you, the pros and the cons, whether it is something that that is a fit, and we're gonna see from there. So before we do that, if you haven't already, please smash the subscribe button, nail the notification bell, hit the little all notifications so you don't miss out. I really appreciate your support. We're working hard to try and grow the channel. Go and check out our other videos. If you want help with where to relocate, getting a residency, getting a second citizenship, a passport, citizenship by investment, citizenship, unofficial citizenship by investment, international tax planning, asset protection, forming companies, opening bank accounts, any of that stuff, please reach out to me. You can book a call, calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer. There's a link in the description below, or send us a message through offshorecitizen.net or offshorecapitalist.com. Okay, well, let's dive in. So I'm here today in Bulgaria. I have had residency in Bulgaria for 3-4 years, something like that. And so I'm going to compare it a little bit to Cyprus. These are two of the most low-tax countries in the EU. So certainly there's a handful of other ones. I've done some videos in the past, and I'm going to, over a little bit of time, cover some other country comparisons for you to give you some sense of how it might work. But just on the surface, let's go through and kind of take a look. So at the corporate level, in theory, Bulgaria has a lower tax rate. They have a 10% flat corporate tax. Now, I've mentioned that if you're planning properly, you really should pay 7.5% tax. There's a 5% dividend tax, which includes a dividend withholding tax. By contrast, if we look at Cyprus, there's a 12.5% corporate tax. There is no dividend withholding tax. So that's one thing. On the personal side, there's a flat 10% tax. Again, if you structure it well, you should probably pay 7.5% tax, but that's that. And in Cyprus, there is a graduated tax system, which can get quite a bit higher. So if you look at it just on the surface, you would say, hey, well, Bulgaria is lower tax than Cyprus. This being said, Cyprus has something called the non-dom program. I've done some videos about this in the past. And so depending on your structure of income, you could pay as little as no tax, or certainly much lower taxes than it appears when you first look at that scenario. Okay, so that's something that you can just say, okay, great, I could pay 0 or 2.65% up to a certain maximum, or things like this, okay? So what I often tell people is Cyprus is the most tax-friendly country in the EU. This actually means the Cyprus non-dom program is the most tax-friendly in the EU. And, a lot of people aren't going to take advantage of that, or, maybe later on are thinking something different, et cetera. It's also a little bit more complex than the Bulgarian system. So Bulgaria is pretty simple and straightforward in terms of how their tax system works. On the flip side, at the corporate level, you can have Cyprus non-resident companies. It doesn't usually apply so much if you go and live there, but in theory that can help you out from a tax standpoint. So that's one thing, is that they have pros and cons. I would say that for most people, if you're working an actual job, it's more tax efficient to be in Bulgaria unless you're going to be resident in Cyprus just part of the year and then you're abroad. That's up to you. Both Cyprus and Bulgaria basically have paper residencies, meaning that there's very little to no physical time requirement in them. You can go and you can have a residency in Bulgaria and you can visit for almost no time, basically just enough to renew your residency. They don't ask you about that when you stay there or anything. In Cyprus, a little bit more complex, depending on the type of residency permit that you have. In theory, you can basically visit once every 2 days on certain ones. Again, I've done some videos on that, so you can go and check out those programs. But in both cases, you have this paper residency, which is kind of interesting. Neither of these are Schengen countries. Both are EU countries, so that's something. In terms of leading to citizenship, Bulgaria leads to permanent residency after 5 years. Cyprus, you can invest to get permanent residency, or basically residency that's permanent so long as you maintain your investment as immediately. However, when you sell that asset, then you don't have it anymore. So that's something to be aware of. Getting citizenship in Bulgaria and Cyprus. So Cyprus has, I think partially because they used to have a citizenship by investment program, they kind of dissuaded people from becoming naturalized normally. And so, it's fairly challenging to meet that criteria. You have to spend 7 years there. You have to have spent 5 actual physical 365 days times 5. The last year you have to spend all the 365 days in the year, so there's quite a bit of that. Then you're in a situation where you need to pass a Greek language test, so it's a little bit tough. That being said, in theory, it is possible. Why the Greek language test is a new thing. In Bulgaria, you have to pass a Bulgarian language test. You have to have been a long-time resident for 5 years. So again, a little bit tricky. In Bulgaria, they don't really allow dual citizenship. So there are some exceptions to that. It depends. But in a lot of scenarios, that's not the case. This being said, you can do an immediate investment and get permanent residency in Bulgaria based on making an investment, which is actually probably one of the most underrated citizenship by investment, residency by investment programs. You can fast track it. So basically it will lead to citizenship after 5 years, but you can fast track it after a year by doubling your investment. I've done a video again on this, and they recently changed the program, so I'll go back and I'll do a video based on the updated changes. But it's actually kind of an attractive way to go in terms of actual fairly low cost. Even though there's quite a bit of money that you put out, the amount that you lose in fees is very low. So that's kind of interesting. In terms of places to live, the weather is clearly better for a lot of the year in Cyprus. I mean, Cyprus has arguably some of the best weather in the EU. There's a few places that are all pretty good, right? Portugal, south of Spain, Montenegro, Cyprus, Malta, etc. These places all have pretty good weather. But I would say from pretty early spring until pretty late fall, like we're talking middle of November, it can still be beautiful in Cyprus. The winters are dreary, but they're not cold, right? Like I spent New Year's there one year, and you're talking about, okay, it was like maybe 17 degrees or something. So it's a little chilly, it's kind of rainy, it's kind of miserable. But on the other hand, certainly not freezing like you're gonna get in most places, right? So in that sense, pretty good. Bulgaria tends to be somewhat mild, temperate, I guess you would say. Like in the winter, it'll get down to -5 to 10. Again, depending on what part of the country you're in, because there's mountains and there's the seaside, etc. During the summer, it'll get up to 30 to 40 degrees, so a little bit cooler than Cyprus during that time, a little bit cooler during the winter as well. So depending on what climate you like, Bulgaria versus Cyprus, that's so-so. Bulgaria does have a seaside, just like clearly Cyprus as an island has a seaside. So in that sense, they have some comparableness. I think I would prefer the Cyprus seaside. Just the water of the Mediterranean is nicer than the water of the Black Sea, I would say. So that's something. Cyprus tends to be, it's a much smaller place. There's a much smaller population, etc. And so as a result, you're in a situation where if you like city living, there's just less going on than there is in Bulgaria. Sofia, around 1.5 million people. Other cities as well, are, okay, they're smaller, but, there's a decent amount of stuff going on. There's a decent amount of conveniences that exist in Bulgaria. So if you like city life, in that sense, it's a little bit better. There's probably equal amounts of history. There's, the history, a lot of it is quite broken down in Bulgaria. It's not like you don't get Rome in Bulgaria, but there is, a reasonable amount of history. Bulgaria actually used to be quite a big empire historically. Cyprus obviously has ties to Greece and to Turkey, and so you've got some interesting ruins there. Not anything crazy, like this is not like going to Athens, this is not like going to Istanbul or whatever, but you have Tomb of Kings and things like this that you can go and check out. So there's that. In terms of kind of from a jobs standpoint, people's wages in Cyprus are actually remarkably high. So from a careers standpoint, you benefit certainly more in terms of wages in Cyprus than you do in Bulgaria, although keeping in mind that, again, the taxes are higher in that scenario in Cyprus than they are in Bulgaria. So you can kind of trade that off. If you're wanting to start a company, then your access to talent is going to be greater in Bulgaria. There's just more people, right, than there is in Cyprus. So that's a bit of a trade-off. On the other hand, if you wanted people to move there, I don't know, maybe people would prefer to move to Cyprus just because of the lifestyle. It's a little bit more Greek. It's, again, the warmer weather. It's like more of a resorty type situation. English language, I would say, is better in Cyprus than it is in Bulgaria. yeah, there's a lot of English. Even though technically the official language is Greek in Cyprus, the reality is that you get a lot of English there. In Bulgaria, you can often get by with English, but definitely the degree to which it is not nearly the same. And a lot of the services are set up for English in Cyprus, whereas they aren't in Bulgaria. So that's something to be aware of. In terms of the financial systems, I'd probably choose the Bulgarian financial system over the Cyprus financial system. Cyprus for a long time was kind of like this offshore haven, but obviously their banks had a ton of problems in 2013, so we haven't recommended people bank there like ever. And you know, even when it was easy to open accounts and things like this, you know, FBME went down for money laundering, and there's just like a lot of concerns about the safety. I don't think that Bulgarian banks are amazing by any stretch, and certainly the compliance has gotten worse over the last 3 years or so. But that being said, there are more solid banks, so I would tend to prefer that. The currency in Cyprus is the euro. It is the lev, which is pegged to the euro in Bulgaria. So, you know, pretty similar in that regard. In theory, they have their own currency, so they can, in theory, print more of it in Bulgaria, which they don't have the power to do in Cyprus, which is part of the reason for the need for kind of them to basically steal people's money in 2013. So you can play on that. Quite a bit of corruption in both countries. They're both kind of the things that you couldn't do in Western Europe kind of got pushed out to kind of these Eastern European places, South and Southern Eastern. So you'll see a lot of kind of like gambling businesses. There was a lot of like binary options and Forex and things that kind of went to both areas, casinos, etc. So that's something to consider. In terms of, let's see here. So it's much more rural, as I was mentioning, in Cyprus. So as a result, you know, if you like a quieter, more rural lifestyle, that's certainly going to be, well, I shouldn't say that. It depends on where you are in Bulgaria, because Bulgaria, you know, is a big country. So in the cities, you know, you have that. But of course, there's tons of rural area there. There's also a lot more diversity. Like you can go skiing, you can have, you know, mountains in Bulgaria. Bulgaria is actually fairly diverse geographically, whereas Cyprus really is not that geographically diverse. Yeah, you can get some outdoor activities and, you know, hiking and things like this, but it's just not as big, it's not as expansive, it doesn't offer as much in that regard. In terms of being connected from the perspective of airports, I mean, Bulgaria is pretty well connected actually, especially a lot of the low-cost airlines. So you get pretty good access. Cyprus isn't bad. There's actually quite a few airports in Cyprus. So you have like Larnaca and Paphos and, you know, a bunch of these. But I find that the flights tend to be a little bit more expensive. Maybe it's because actually if you look geographically on a map, you're going to see that Cyprus is kind of down at the bottom corner of the Mediterranean, really closer to Turkey than it is to Europe. And so it's, I would argue, maybe slightly less well connected, but not bad. They're fairly comparable in that regard. Cost of living, Cyprus is definitely more expensive than Bulgaria. Bulgaria is, you know, the cheapest country in the EU in terms of costs, which makes it fairly attractive. Cyprus is not expensive, but certainly not as cheap as Bulgaria. So, you know, you can kind of take that for what it is for you. Yeah, so that's kind of a basic overview. I think increasingly I'm telling people to go and check out Cyprus as an option, because for a lot of what people are doing with investing, I mean, you can get no tax on the sale of securities. Under the non-dom regime, you can pay no tax on dividends. You have a bunch of different rules that are fairly helpful in Cyprus that work well for you. This being said, there's also some that work in Bulgaria. And, you know, some people really like the fact that they can pay quite low tax, but still pay some tax in Bulgaria, and then basically claim, hey, listen, I'm tax resident here. And that has some usefulness in other places. So, you know, I think that they're in some ways remarkably comparable, right? Obviously, you get, you know, Greek and Turkish culture, whereas, you know, you get more Balkan-esque culture, I guess, in Bulgaria. I would say that, you know, obviously, you know, a lot of Bulgaria is not on the seaside, whereas, you know, pretty much all of Cyprus is on the seaside, or at least the parts that you would typically live in. For me personally, my preference is to be in a place that has more city, more conveniences, more going on. So Cyprus is a little quiet for me. it just doesn't have that degree of establishment. And honestly, I mean, Bulgaria doesn't have enough for me in terms of that. But again, to each their own, right? Depending on what it is that you prefer versus somebody else prefers. So that's a basic overview for you. I think they both have appeal to the right types of people. I think if I was going to start a business in that country and actually like hire people, etc., I would go with Bulgaria. If I was in a situation where I was going to move as an investor, I would go to Cyprus. If I was going there for, a place that I'm going to base myself out for part of the year and enjoy the nice weather and kind of relax, etc., probably as like kind of a retirement place. I think retirement-wise, Cyprus is probably better. If I was thinking about a place to go have a career and actually try and get a job, etc., probably Cyprus is better. But if I was saying, hey, listen, I'm a digital nomad who's not relying on local work, I am a business owner who wants to go someplace and grow my business and, be based, then maybe Bulgaria, then it's a little bit more, it's not quite so clear in those situations. So I hope that helps. I hope that gives you some idea. And yeah, I would love to hear what you guys think and comparing the two. And just one kind of last thing, which is as a tourist, if I was going short term, I would tend to prefer to go to Cyprus. Although there's not really much going on in Cyprus in the winter, so it would mainly be what you're doing during the summer. And if I was looking for the winter, I mean, you can go skiing for quite inexpensively in Bulgaria. The seaside, like I said, is not quite as nice, so I would lean towards Cyprus. There tends to be nicer hotels. There's just kind of this more resort environment. So as a tourist, I think I'd probably go to Cyprus before I would go to Bulgaria, but you could go to either one. So I hope that helps. I'm going to see you guys on the next video.